The beauty of John 20, verse 23, where Jesus said, "He whose sins you forgive are forgiven, and he whose sins you retain are retained," being a warning rather than a license, means, and when the Lord's Prayer says, "Forgive us our sins as we forgive those who sin against us," or "Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us," the beauty of this, if you do see it as a warning, is that it makes it very easy for society to see who's black and who's white, who's evil and who's good. Because if good people have a forgiving heart, there's no confusion as to whether that person has got a role of being white or being black, because it's basically saying there is no such condonement of a role of being black. If everybody who is white acts white, it's very easy for society then to see who is black or who is evil, so that black evil people can be punished by society for being evil. But if you see as a Christian or a disciple of Jesus that you've got a license to forgive certain people and hold other people's sins, hold them to account, you would be not regarded as being white if you did that, because the people you chose not to forgive, saying you're doing what Jesus has said, you would then be regarded, if that person in God's eyes hadn't sinned, but you didn't know that and you thought they had sinned and you didn't forgive them, then you would seem just as bad to other certain people, because you would be having the role of being black. So the beauty of God saying forgive and have a forgiving heart is that he's basically saying there is no more role playing for you. You don't act black, you act white, you forgive. And then the real evil people, the real people who are black, can then be punished by God for being black. Because if you do think you can retain people's sins and they're not actually sins, then you're being as bad as an evil person who's trying to catch people out to make the Bible fail for that person, as being like that. You're being black by your choice not to forgive them of something you consider they've sinned over, or you've misquoted a verse out of the Bible telling everyone they've sinned, and you hold that against them. Then you, if God doesn't think they've sinned and that verse isn't appropriate to be held against them, then you are acting black and you are doing something evil against that person unless you forgive them. So it's not a license to choose who you forgive and who you retain their so-called sins. Because if God doesn't agree with the verse you've chosen to hold as sins against them, if God doesn't agree that that verse is appropriate and that they are sins, then you holding that against them makes you just as bad as an evil person who wants to close down and destroy that person's reputation and integrity. So if you've got a forgiving heart and you forgive people, it makes it much easier for society to see plainly who is black rather than who's just taken on the role of being black. so that black people can be punished by God. Because Cain was meant to be put to death. And if you think, oh, well, let's forgive Cain or let's hold sins against Cain, then you would be not sure whether Cain was actually guilty or not, because you would be saying, some people would be saying, let's forgive Cain, so God forgives him. And some people will be saying, let's hold those sins against Cain. So you wouldn't actually know what Cain deserved or what God's will for Cain would be. Because God's will for you might be that you hadn't forgiven someone who hadn't sinned like Cain had, so that you would be as bad as Cain because of your role. And then it would make it very difficult for people like Cain to actually be judged in reality.